schluss of our learning should be a panacea. We're going to start Nun Amid Beis by the Tashma Chaymer Bezevach Mibetmura. It's about 12 lines from the top. A little more. 13, 14. Okay. We had a question. If the par of Yom Kippur is a carbon yachid, can you do tumura on it? Tumura means to exchange it for another one. Well, not can you. You're not allowed to. But if you do, is the tumura effective? No, the tumura is only works on a carbon yachid, not on a carbon tzibur. So if we say that it's a carbon yachid, then tumura should work. The only problem is, why is this a question? It's because I know that it may be a carbon yachid because it's brought by Aaron from his own fund. But all the kayanim receive atonement through this carbon. So if you look after the one who brings it, it's Aaron. If you look after those that receive the atonement, so that's all the kayanim, so it's a carbon tzibur. Well, we're not changing it to a carbon tzibur. It's enough, maybe shutfim, but it's enough that you can't do tumura. In other words, how does tumura view this sacrifice? The Gemara said, that's Rabbi Bosa's name of Rabbi Yechanan, that you always look after, you follow the people that are receiving atonement. So why is this a question? So the Gemara said, well, the question's a little different. The question is, I know that the people receive atonement. Do the people receive atonement because they have a portion of the sacrifice? Or do the people receive atonement, not the people, the kayanim people, just the kayanim? All the kayanim receive atonement because Aaron brought his sacrifice. If Aaron gets an atonement, everyone else gets atonement automatically. Not because they have a part in the sacrifice. That's the way we learned it. We learned bekufya miskapri. That means they get an atonement through floating along together with Aaron. If Aaron lifts up, everyone lifts up, but it's Aaron's atonement. They're tagging along. Yeah. I saw in Rabbeinu Chananel, he doesn't say the kufya that they come through floating along. He says that they come through, that they get atonement because they gather together. The hekefa. When they gather together, that's when they receive atonement. I would compare this to the Gemara Brachos that says, schara the pirka, the schar of coming to the shear was the pushing that they would have. So in other words, it's the atonement doesn't come maybe from the sacrifice. Atonement comes from the fact that everyone gathers together over there. And that's how they receive atonement. Okay. Back to the question, can the par become tumura, be exchanged for another sacrifice, and the next sacrifice will become kaidish, just like the par. But the par on Yom Kippur. Tashemasa, come and listen. Chaymer bezevach mi betmura. The chaymer betmura mi bezevach. So what's the what? Oh, thank you. Shika. Okay. Thank you. You follow what's going on? Okay. We're talking about if the carbon, the part of Yom Kippur, if it can make tumura. Right. The discussion yesterday was, how do the other kayanim receive atonement? Is it because they have a partnership in the part, or is it because the Kohen Gadol gets his atonement, somehow automatically everyone else floats along and gets atonement with the Kohen Gadol? So if it's more than one person involved, if there's a partnership here, then there's no tumura. Right. So we quote a brisa now. We're going to compare originally the carbon and then the tumura. Tumura is the exchange. What's this? Something that's stronger by the original carbon. Maybe it's supposed to say ubetziba. This applies to an individual. A regular carbon could be an individual. In other words, an individual can consecrate the sacrifice, and it could be the community sacrifice. It applies to both for an original carbon. And at times it pushes off Shabbos and Tama. And it also makes Tamura. But Tamura is not going to have any of those things. Tamura is not going to apply to, it's probably not Ubetziba, it's probably Kibbetziba. It doesn't have Tzibur. There's no Tzibur by Tamura. Tamura cannot push off Shabbos. Only the original carbon can push off Shabbos. Tamura cannot push off Tuma, impurity. It can't be brought just because everyone is Tameh. That's only for designated sacrifices at a specific time. And the Tamura would be the exchange. It wouldn't be, it's just you bring it, but it's not the designated time for that. And we had a rule that even though the original sacrifice can make another Tamura, but the Tamura can't make another Tamura. But not another one. You can't go on. You can't, grandfather. Yeah.
Is this still talking about Yom Kippur?
I can't hear you. Tell me again.
Is the subject still Yom Kippur?
Yeah.
So
we're dealing with the par.
What happens? How can someone hold the opinion that you can't bring it tomorrow? Because what are they supposed to do if the original par becomes pasul? You can't bring it, and you can't bring it tomorrow. So
yeah,
what happens to that avodah?
Right. So the tamura is not just a replacement sacrifice. The tamura is a second sacrifice where a person attempts to take the kedusha off one and put it on the other, and the rule is that the kedusha is not removed from the first one, and the second one also becomes kodesh. And I think there's also malchus for doing that. So it's a special halacha. It's not this one got a mum and we replace it with another one. That's not tamura. Tamura is this other halacha. Hayahu tamura siya kodesh. Someone attempts to exchange a sacrifice. It doesn't matter. Bein toiv l'ra, bein ra.
So in other words, it just applies to the voluntary exchange.
Yeah.
Not the exchange required by circumstance.
Right. That's what we're discussing it.
Okay, thank
discussing
you.
If someone attempts to do this exchange, which is forbidden, what would happen? Is it considered a partnership carbon or a community carbon, or is it considered a private carbon? The atonement is going on all the kayanim, but it's Aaron's carbon. Okay. Now, what the Gemara is attempting to do here is to take a look at this chaymer bezebach mibetmura, and what we're attempting to say is, which zebach are we talking about? We're going to be talking about the par. So if we would read this through, we would say that the par is only a yachid, not a tzibur. A par pushes off Shabbos and Tumah, and it makes Tmura. That's what we're going to attempt to say. But Tmura would be different. What's the stringency that Tmura has over an original sacrifice? Let's say we're talking about the par. There's an interesting thing. Normally, if an animal has a mum before you consecrate it, the kedusha says zevach doesn't go on it. It already has a mum, so it gets consecrated as the kabayas, kedusha's damim, just the value, but it doesn't become a korban. No. Now, 1 second. If it has a mum before you consecrate it, then it just becomes like you dedicated, some item that you have, your menorah. It's not. It doesn't have the kedusha of a korban because it already had a mum. It was never eligible. If you got the mum afterwards, If we got the mum afterwards, then it could be redeemed usually, unless it's that's if there's a different psul or a few, and you need to let it get a mum to be able to shach it. Here it got a mum. So interesting thing is that when it comes to Tmura, if it had a mum beforehand, because I have one valid sacrifice, I want to exchange it for another one that has a mum. So I'm doing Tmura onto one that's mum. Turns out that the Kedusha does go onto the one with the mum. That would not have taken place if it was an original carbon. What do you do with it that has a mum? I mean, how does it become? So the answer is that you have to treat it like a carbon with a mum, which means you can eat it, but you can't share the wool and work it. And it has restrictions. Why is that? Because the pasuk says bein toiv l'ra. We can't exchange whether good for bad. That means bad means that it has a mum. So in other words, the Torah tells me that the Tamura works even on a carbon that has a mum.
Is there any reason why someone would wish to make this Tamura?
Probably
in other words, is
this
an entirely theoretical discussion?
No, he would probably say, "Oh, I really don't want to give that sacrifice. I'd like to give a different one. Let me switch it." He dedicated one, and before he gets to the Beis Hamikdash, he decides, "I really like that one. I'm going to give a different one."
But
So
I'm talking about the Kohen Gadol,
right?
On Yom Kippur, making.
Yeah. So this is more theoretical. Is Tamur only for a lesser one? No, it could be even a better one. Even if he wants to give a better one. So Shatmur Chalal Balmum Kuvav, any Yaitzel Lechulim Ligazis V'liyavid. Tamura doesn't go out to Chulin to share the wool. Okay, here what it means is like this: a regular carbon also doesn't go out to share the wool. So this is you have to put in one detail here. The detail is that if the mum was there beforehand, and now I have two things to do. There's a mum in this animal. Either I make this animal Tamura for a carbon that I have, or I make it a new Kedusha. If I make it a new Kedusha, new carbon, then it doesn't get the status of a new carbon. It just becomes consecrated to the Kabbayas, like if I dedicate my menorah. And then, and so when I redeem it, it doesn't have the restrictions of a carbon being redeemed. And I can share the wool and I could work the animal. It's not a redeemed carbon. However, by Tamura, when I make it into a replacement carbon, so then it has those limitations, and I can't share the wool, and I can't work the animal. This is not so by zevach if the mum was kaidim to the hekdesh. Mum kaidim to the hekdesh. Okay. Hi zevach echidami. When we are talking about these two sacrifices here, you said you're comparing an original sacrifice to a replacement sacrifice. Which original sacrifice are we referring to? If you say that it's a carbon yachid, whoa, midachi Shabbos v'tumah. You said that it's going to push off Shabbos. It's going to push off tumah. You have a carbon yachid that pushes off Shabbos and tumah. Ela de tzibur must be a community sacrifice. Miyais tmura. So would that one make tmura? Ela lav de par. Must be talking about this unique sort of sacrifice, which is the par of Yom Kippur. It's a carbon yachid. It pushes off Shabbos and Tumah. The Kviyah Leizman, because it has a designated time. What's the designated time? Yom Kippur. Va'isa Tmura, and it also makes Tmura the carbon yachid, because it's considered a carbon yachid, we have a teretz. See? The only way we have no way of explaining this brisa except by saying it's the par. And now we have a teretz that the par, you can do Tmura on the par. Amrav Sheshis Loy. It says no. This is a very easy way to get out. Anytime I can, the whole reason that's what's compelling me to say that this is the par is because you don't have another example. But if I find another example, immediately I lose the whole raya. So he says, Be'eli Shel Aaron. It's talking about the aisle. There was also an aisle that was brought about it. And it's even more logical to say that. If you say that would enter your mind to say that it's the par, if that's how you want to learn it. Tamura de par. So what the Gemara is doing here is it's comparing literally the sacrifice that I have and the tamura of the sacrifice. I have an original sacrifice that's consecrating the par, and the tamura of the par. Notice the comparison is the same exact sacrifice. That's what the Gemara is doing. So the tamura of the par, Shabbos v'tumahud loydachia b'chol mikrav karava. It's telling me that the tamura of the par can't be brought on Shabbos. Can't be brought b'tumah. What do you mean to say? That it's going to be brought during the week? But tamura is chatasi. The par is a chatas. Tamura is chatas, lamisa is there. And the tamura is chatas is never brought. It goes lamisa. It can't be that the comparison is this for that. So the Gemara says, that's not a raya. Because, no, this is Rav Sheshes talking. Sheshes was saying that it can't be the par. It has to be the ayal. I'll prove it to you. Because the par, ayal was the ayla, and the par is a chatas. It can't be the par, because it says you don't bring it on Shabbos, the tamura. But during the week you do bring it. The chatas isn't brought. Tamura's chatas isn't brought. It's lamisa. So it says my tamura, shame tamura. What we just did is we just expanded the comparison. I'm dealing with an individual original carbon, the par. You know what? That individual, that single sacrifice, that's brought on Shabbos. That's brought b'tumah. That could make tamura. However, when it comes to general tamura, not the tamura of the par, in general tamura, like the whole category of all tamura, so then I don't bring it on Shabbos. But I bring it during the week. Not the comparison to the par. Shame tamura, we're calling it. The general category of. So the Gemara says, once you're expanding the tamura, so expand the zevach. Shame zevach. Why do you have to be talking about the par? Well, to say it like this. You know what? In the category of original sacrifices, there are those that are brought on Shabbos. There are those that are brought b'tumah, and there are those that can make tamura. But when it comes to tamura, there's none of them are brought on Shabbos, and none of them are, and we don't need an individual sacrifice. It's all general. Where it says Shem Zevach like Tani. No, I'm not going to talk about Shem Zevach. That's like just an objection. We go back a bit to the last 2 years. I thought the whole topic of the one that called Gago and Korban, just by talking about what is the Korban or the Korban, the mutual distinction, right? Right. All of a sudden, these chiefs, they're just speaking about Korban. So just keeping that in mind, should I think the difference in ours, Korban, from everyone else's? Because right here, we have more this is not true, that we have this, this thing with Dom as well, or is that apply to every single thing? Was it the blood or was it the blood? So I'm saying, what was something like forgot about that? What just put it up? Is that Dr. Stein is asking that because we had previous discussions about if the par is referring to the actual animal or the dam, maybe when it comes over here, we can't. This is a unique situation because we refer to the dam as the par itself, at least according to Rish Lakish. Yeah, I'm not sure how that would play in. I mean, it could play in. I don't know. Apparently, it doesn't. But it's an interesting observation. I don't know. Okay, so now what we're saying is we wanted to do like this just general comparison. Any type of sacrifice, original sacrifice, and in all of them there are those that push off Shabbos and push off Tumah, and they're also make Tamura. Mashenkein Tamura never pushes off Shabbos, never pushes off Tamura, never pushes off Tumah, and tumura itself cannot make another tumura. So we said, no, you can't do that comparison because they would never have said a general original sacrifice. Are you looking for it? We're on page 50B, towards the bottom. So it says, Mimai, how do you know that it won't do that? We have a problem. We have a problem. If we do this, listen to the problem. If we do a general comparison, then it doesn't add up. It's like this. The general comparison is, let's say you compare people from New York to people from Florida. No. Why? Because one guy in New York did something that no one in Florida did. Right? That's the. And then we say, oh, let's do the other way. He didn't move to Florida. Then we do the other way. Say, oh, one guy in Florida did something that no one in. Okay, so that's what it would have to be. But let's say one guy in Florida did the same thing that then you lose the whole comparison. But if I'm comparing not just the general, that one person from there, but I say everyone from there is different than everyone from here, or at least this person is different than this, right? Then I would have a comparison. I wouldn't have that whole general thing that, oh, there's one other person. Okay, so what we're doing over here is like this. If Tamura is general, all Tamuras, I'm not saying a specific Tamura, not the Tamura of the par, general Tamura. Okay, so none of the general Tamuras, or let's say all general Tamuras are chal on a balmum. Okay. Pasuk says that if you exchange a carbon for another animal and it's a balmum, it becomes kodesh, becomes holy. So let's go the other way. But no general karbanas are chal on a balmum. None of the original karbanas are chal on a balmum, if you would say that. And we have a problem because it turns out that there are two instances where it's chal on a balmum. That is by a bachar. If an animal is the firstborn animal is born with a mum, becomes a karban. Now, and I treat it like a karban, just a karban with a mum. And also meiser, the 10th one, lo yavaker. I don't choose which one goes through the fence. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm choosing. I don't choose. Oh, don't go. You're the 10th. You have a mum. Don't you put through another one. I don't do that. It goes through, it becomes a carbon. If it has a mum, then I treat it as a carbon with a mum. So you see, if I'm talking about general original sacrifices, I also have scenarios where there is the kedusha is going to be chal on a mum. And the inyats in the chum goes to the liavet. And if in those cases, by bechar and meiser, we're on top of Manal 51. It doesn't. It's considered a sacrifice enough that I can't mistreat it by shearing the wool and working the animal as a regular farm animal. Ella shem zevach lekatani. Rather, when it comes to the carbon itself, we're not dealing with the general concept of karbanis, because if that's the case, then it's not going to work. Maishna tmura, shem tmura, maishna tmura. So why by tmura do we say shem tmura, the general tmura? The Gemara says shem tmura chasi. But zevach ikka b'char v'kamaisa. Shem tmura. You want to say that all tmuras, all exchanges are one category, but karbanis, there are different categories. So therefore, the carbon that we're talking about, we wanted to say is the par, and we say that it makes tmura. Or it came along Rav Sheshes and said no, it's dealing with the ayil. And that was our comparison. I don't think we have a strong proof, but we don't. It could be the ayil. Okay, Rav Sheshes, we have a question, interesting question. Adamukum le be'eli shel Aaron, lukme bePesach, b'deichas Shabbos v'setama, v'isa tomorrow the carbon yachidu. I was thinking of this the whole time. I was wondering, like, why wasn't this the first, the most obvious? When you think about a carbon that pushes off Shabbos, that pushes off Tumah, that could be Tmura, carbon Pesach. You're looking for one sacrifice. I mean, that's the one that had the big discussion the whole time, that it pushes off Shabbos and pushes off Tumah. So Rav Sheshes found this aisle of Aaron that pushes off Shabbos and pushes off Tumah, and it makes Tmura. Why was he restricted to that? Because it's a it's a carbon yachid. He needed it to be a carbon yachid as well. In Pesach, there's a carbon yachid. Well, that's not so clear. He says, "Kosavar in sheichten Pesach ala yachid." He holds that you need to have another person with you in the carbon Pesach. Quote a pasuk: "Leisuchal l'zbayach as Pesach." It says ba'achad sharecha. But if you stop the pasuk in the middle, "Leisuchal l'zbayach as Pesach ba'achad," tells me that you can't shecht it with one person there. You need to have someone else. So if that's the case, so that's why he didn't choose it, because we were talking about that it applies also with the tzibur, yachid kibbutz tzibur, that it applies to both. Rashi says it's a little different. Rashi says, "Kivan de einay ba b'loy shutfes ein oiseh tmura." I think what he means is like this: we have a special rule that tmura cannot be done by an animal of shutfes. Is that correct? We said before, you mentioned that. The carbon of shutim in oiseh tmura. So it needs to be able to be brought a shutfes, not and not brought a shutfes to have tmura. We're saying that now that the carbon Pesach would not have tmura. Why? Because he holds that it needs to be a shutfes. No, it's like this. Since it always has shutfes, it's never without shutfes. There always needs to be another partner there. Therefore, there's no tmura, because tmura is only brought is only by an individual. That's the pshat, simple pshat. Okay? It was easier than I thought. If it was possible for it to be below shutfes, then it would have had tmura, but it's impossible. So there's no tmura by a carbon Pesach. That's a good teretz. Why didn't Rav Sheshes say carbon Pesach? Because carbon Pesach doesn't have tmura. V'nuk maybe Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni doesn't need another partner. Pesach Sheni you could bring. A person was tamei, he wasn't able to bring the carbon, so he brings a Pesach Sheni. So the Gemara says, "Midachi tuma." Why did he bring a Pesach Sheni? Because he was tamei. So tamei by the first one. So comes the second one, and he's tamei again. Never. So he brings the carbon Pesach tuma. We're saying it had to be a case that we're saying that it pushes off the tumah. Amalei Ravuna Breder Rav Yeshua Rav. Okay, we have a new. So we lose that. It can't. Well, that's what we're saying right now. That no, because it's a karma. It's a mitzvah saseh. If it would have been a lice saseh, then it would probably be a chapas, but it's a mitzvah saseh to bring the pesach. Amalei Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua Rava. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua is a student of Rava. He tells Rava, "Betana, Maishna Pesach the Karele Karban Yachid, Maishna Chagiga the Karele Karban Tzibur." Which brisa was this referring to? Did we mention before that the Korban Pesach was a Korban Yachid? Could be on the page before. The Pesach, the Chavite Kayin Gadol, the Pesach, the Korban Yachid, who v'deichen as a Shabbos v'satuma. There's a conversation between Reb Meir and Reb Yaakov. Why does he say that the Korban Pesach is a Korban Yachid, but the Korban Chagiga, he calls it a Korban Tzibur? Yeah. If you want to say that the Korban Chagiga is brought by the gathering when all the people are there, so Pesach Nami Asim B'Knufya. The Korban Pesach also is brought with everyone. So in other words, what's the distinction, the Korban Pesach and the Korban Chagiga, that the Korban Pesach is called the Korban Yachid, according to that Tana that calls it a Korban Yachid? So the Gemara says, well, Ika Pesach Sheni D'Le'asim B'Knufya. Pesach is called the Korban Yachid because there's a Pesach Sheni, which is clearly a Korban Yachid, because you don't have the whole congregation there when you're bringing it. It's just the individual that missed out on the first one. Well, that's a good question. I'm not asking if the same rules apply, that you have to finish it by midnight and can't break a bone. It says it says that it's supposed to be done according to, and then there's exception. And generally, yes, but there's exception. Right. That's a problem. He's asking, how does he finish the whole animal by midnight? Amalei, if that's the case, what are we asking? The layas of the knuf, yeah? If we're talking about if we're talking about Pesach Sheni, and we're saying that the Korban Pesach is called the Korban Yachid because of Pesach Sheni. So the Pesach Sheni should also push off Shabbos and push off Tumah. If we're attributing the Korban Yachid of the Pesach Sheni to the regular Korban Pesach, then that means that we're holding that they're the same Korban. It should have the same halachas. Amalein, he says you're right. Command Amar Dachi. It's following the opinion that says that the Pesach Sheni does push off Shabbos, does push off Tumah. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Pesach Sheni deichas Shabbos. Beina deichas Tumah. Rabbi Yehuda Imer af deichas Tumah. It could push off Tumah. My time at the Tanakama. What's the reason for the first opinion that it doesn't? Only Shabbos, but not Tumah. Amalach mipnei Tumah dachisu b'yasa b'Tumah. You had a problem. You're trying to solve the problem. You were tummy at the first korban. You're trying to resolve it by becoming tar. Now you're tummy again. So you didn't fix the problem. So you can't bring it to Tumah. But Shabbos was never. Yeah, you could have done the first one if you're going to bring B'Tumah. Rabbi Yehuda says, don't get into that calculation. It has all the halachas of the first Korban Pesach. And the first Korban Pesach could have been brought B'Tumah. Pesach Sheni is brought B'Tumah. We tried to help you out, but if you weren't able to do it, so do it B'Tumah. Gemara says the Kepa Clay. Now we're going back to our original discussion. We were asking, how did the Kayanim get atonement through the par of the Kayan Gadol? Is it because they all have a portion of the Kayan Gadol's par, Or is it because the Kohen Gadol gets atonement and everyone gets automatically drawn along? So we say like this. It says several times in those psukim, his sacrifice. It says his, means it's not the Kohenim. The Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Asher loy, his sacrifice, Mishalayo maybe Mishal Tzibur. He brings it from his own money, not the community. His brothers, the Kohenim, get atonement through it. Maybe you could bring from their money. It says no, it has to be from his money. Maybe he's not supposed to bring it from their money, but if he does bring it from their money, as he uses their funds to buy the carbon, it's kosher. It then says Asher. It says again Asher 3 times. Shana kasav alav la'akiv. And a general rule in Kutchim is that if you have an extra time, it tells me that it's going to be ma'akiv. It's going to invalidate. So it must be that the atonement comes the kufya, that they're just drawn along, because it's clearly only the Kohen Gadol's funds. Yeah, they don't have any partnership in this. The Gemara says, how is there any atonement? There has to be some sort of participation here. It must be that the Eibishter makes the Kohen Gadol's funds hefker, to allow the Kohenim to be participants in that karban. And if that's the case, we could say for Tamura as well. And as our original question was, is it a karban shutfim? And there's no Tamura on this because the brothers, the Kohenim, are involved. So we said no, it has to be his funds. And therefore, Tamura could be made. It's individual. We said, well, how would they get atonement if it's totally his? It must be that it comes from his funds, but the Eibishter makes it as if it's everyone's. If that's the case, then for Tamura as well, maybe we'll say that there really is a participation here in the campaign Tamura, because it's considered a carbon ashutva. Yeah, we don't really have an answer. We're just believing it like you could say like this, like that. Okay, we have a Mishnah. Very interesting what's happening here. He's on his way to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Kohen Gadol is on his way to the Kodesh HaKadoshim through the Heichal. What is he going to do in the Kodesh HaKadoshim? He's going to do the Ketores. He has the fire pan and he has the spoon and he's on his way. Right? He's walking in the Heichal. So he gets to the curtain that's dividing Kodesh HaKadoshim backstage. He's going to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Now, it turns out, according to this first opinion, that there are 2 curtains there. And there's an amma between them. And he would have to walk through the curtain like an S to get into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Rabbi Yossi Omer, there's only one preiches. The pasuk says preiches divides the kodesh and the kodesh hakadashim. Where do you get the 2 preiches? There's only one. The Gemara says Shaper kamlu Rabbi Yossi l'Rabbanan. Rabbi Yossi has a good claim. No, he quotes a pasuk. I mean, that's pretty. That's quite powerful. Rabbanan, what are the Rabbanan? Do army lachani mili b'mishkan av mikdash sheni kiven layavi yama traxin mikdash rishonu davai estapkulu rabban mikdashasi klotni miklachotz v'avshtei parechas. It says like this: the pasuk that you quoted was from the Mishkan. We're in the base of Mikdash now. The base of Mikdash, we made it out of stone, so we made a wall that was an amma thick, which that was the measurement of what it should be, based on the prophet, what the prophet says, how it should be, through David HaMelech. Told us how to make it, right? The problem is that in the second base of Mikdash, they made the roof 2 amas higher. So you couldn't keep the wall one amma. If you make a taller wall, you have to make the base thicker. Now, they didn't change the size of the room, so they couldn't take up any more space to make the base of the wall thicker. So, and the wall was higher, so you can't make a higher wall without, you can just add on top. So what they did was they said that we're going to use curtains. Now we have a problem if you use a curtain, because a curtain isn't a stone. It's not a thick. You can make it a little thicker, but it's not going to be an amma thick, a curtain. So what do you do with that amma? So you make two curtains and you keep the amma in the middle. They didn't know. They could make a curtain, but which side do they put it of the amma? Are we going to give an extra amma to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, an extra amma to the Heichal? So they didn't know which one to do. So they made two curtains and they kept it in the middle. No, I don't know, but it had to take off. It had to take up. Uh-huh. Well, the difference is that, look, let's say this can stand up like this. This can stand up, but if I make it twice the size, then it's not going to stand up. Right? Overall thicker. Or it could be that it was wider on the bottom. Yeah, Dr. Stein is asking if it was wider on the bottom, that would make it more balanced. Yeah, but maybe the issue was just the floor. I'm not sure. I don't know. I know there were other walls that were planned. No, but how would the pareches extend like that? Had what's it called, a petty, the jest that they have it, they go out like Okay. Okay. Tanarabanan started in the Brisa. He's walking through the Heichal. What was his route? There's three items in the Heichal, plus some others which we'll get to. But there's basically the Mizbeach, Hazav, the golden altar, which was to the front of it. Then there was the Shulchan and the Menorah. Those are more back, more closer to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Shulchan was on the north, and the Menorah is on the south. So where did he go? He had there's in between the wall and the Shulchan, in between the Shulchan and the Mizbeach, in between the Mizbeach and Menorah, in between the wall and the Menorah. There's those options. Yeah, maybe he could walk wherever he wants. Okay, so take a look at this. It says, he walked through the south, between the Mizbeach and the Menorah, not the most south, but between the Mizbeach, center south. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's the words for Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir ben Shulchan and Mizbeach. Rabbi Meir says he walks between the Shulchan and the Mizbeach, north, not all the way north, but mid-north. The Yeshaymer ben Shulchan l'Kaisel. Some say that he went, all the way against the wall to the north. Man Yeshaymer, who's that opinion? Rav Chisda Rabbi Yossi. Rav Chisda says it's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Damar Pischa b'Tzafon Kai. Rabbi Yossi said, which side was the curtain folded up? There was a fold in the curtain, to allow. The curtains had one spot on them where it was folded up so that you could walk into and get in. So it's sort of like a doorway. So basically says the doorway was on the north. So he's not going to walk on the south to get to the doorway on the north. So he walks all the way on the north. Well, Man Yeshayimrim, we said that's Rabbi Yossi. It says, what did the Yeshayimrim say? Bein Shulchan l'Kaisel. Amar, Pesach b'tzachim kai.
I think he's trying to avoid walking past something more clothing, because that would be disrespectful.
Yeah, but it can't be because he's going to the Aron. That's the most. Okay.
Yeah, but on the way there, not to bypass.
I was thinking that it has to do with his service in the Holy of Holies. Is it more associated with Gashmias or Ruchnias? And the Menorah is Ruchnias, and the Shulchan is Gashmias. And we're sending him like which route? But I thought it had to do with that. Same thing. Okay. So Rabbi Yehuda says that the entrance was on the south. Rabbi Meir commands severely. Who does Rabbi Meir hold like? Rabbi Yehuda severely. Rabbi Meir, remember, held that he goes to the north, but not all the way to the north. So where was the entrance? Is it? The Gemara is going to ask later, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, why didn't he walk along the wall if he holds that it's really on the south? But whatever the case is, who does Rabbi Meir hold like? Where's the doorway? Rabbi Yehuda severely. If he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that it's on the north, that Rabbi Yehuda held that it was on the south. Nail Rabbi Yehuda, why doesn't he go to the south? Rabbi Yossi severely that it's on the north. Nail Rabbi Yossi, so he should go all the way against the wall. Lo'ilam Rabbi Yossi severely. He holds like Rabbi Yossi that the entrance in between the curtains is on the north. There were 10 more tables in this room that Shlomo Melech added. Now the question is, were they directly against the wall? He says yes. There were 5 on each side of the other shulchan, so you couldn't go along the wall because it was blocking. But there's another option. You could say that they were not blocking the wall. You could have walked along the wall because the tables were a rectangle. They were 2.5 by 1.5, I think. So if they're facing, 5 of them would take up 10 amas. The whole room was 20 amas. So they were only on the north side. Okay, so 5 of them would take up 10 amas if they're facing north to south. But if they're facing east to west, then there was no problem. It was just 2 amas. It was just 1.5 amas thick. You could walk along the wall. You could walk any way you want. Yeah. Right. So if that's the case, so why didn't he go along the wall, like closer to the doorway? He says like this: Mishum Shechina. You don't walk straight along the doorway, looking into where the curtain is bent up. You shouldn't walk straight that way. You should walk more modestly, without looking into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And then when you get there, you have to take into account that this would follow that there's one parechas. This was Rabbi Yossi's opinion. If there's 2 parechas, then what's the problem? Who are we talking about here? Lo'ilam Rabbi Yossi severely. He holds like Rabbi Yossi. Shulchan Asafim v'darim menachem. We're asking on Rabbi Meir. I think it's talking about. Yeah, it must be talking about that there's one parechas. He's following Rabbi Yossi's opinion in the Mishnah. For Rabbi Yossi, what about Rabbi Yossi himself? He didn't seem to be a problem. Rabbi Yossi Amalach Chaviv in Yisrael Shleitzricha Akasav L'Shliach. Yeah, this is an interesting way of putting this. The Jewish people are so important that they can daven on their own. They don't need a shliach. Now they have a shliach. The shliach can walk directly in. He can face directly the opening. Rabbi Yehuda, Nami Neil Ben Menayla Kaisel. What about Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda says that he walks on the south, but in between the shulchan, in between the menorah and the mizbeach, not along the wall. Right. Why doesn't he walk along the wall if he holds the doors right there? Let him go directly to the door. It says mashkarimani. His clothing would get dirty by rubbing against the wall because the candles darken the wall. All of the burning constantly, the black would have been along the wall. It would have gotten him dirty. He's wearing white clothes. Okay. They said in the blank, Rabbi Blank has a bunch of daughters, a lot of daughters. It's on the ceiling above the Shabbos candles.
Yeah, well,
Every-
we have to go paint it.
Okay.
The homes,
Have a good day.